Hello, welcome to the Mychal Raynes channel. I'm Mychal Raynes. In today's video, I'd like to talk about some current trends that have been going on in the economy and what it means for inflation, specifically the BEZOS Act and tariffs. So one thing to understand, typically with inflation, you get inflation by increasing the money supply. That's where inflation usually shows up. But what we're seeing now is inflation through legislation, I like to call it. And one of the ways, we look at like the BEZOS Act that's being proposed. It's not law yet, but we just want to look at the spirit of this BEZOS Act and see what it would mean for the economy. And what it basically says is that Bezos's company and companies like that, for every dollar of government aid that their employees get, the government will tax the company. So in theory, no company is going to want to pay that tax, so they'll just give the money directly to the employee. That's the hope and the anticipation, and it seems to be the spirit behind the proposal. So what would happen if we got something like the BEZOS Act in place? Well, one thing that it could lead to would be a deflationary event. And how could this be? Well, let's say companies didn't want to pay the employees and they thought maybe it would be more beneficial to lay off staff and find other workarounds, whether it be through technology or just changing up their systems and approaches to really minimize their employees. And if you had a major loss of employees, all those employees no longer are getting a wage and participating in the economy. So the economy as a whole has some sort of deflation kind of effect baked in. But let's say that companies don't lay off lots of employees and they go ahead and they pay the money that they would have normally not had to pay in the free market, but the government is subsidizing with their programs. So what would we get in that type of situation? Well, if we give the employees more money, then they're going to have more money to spend, so there's a larger amount of money in the pool, let's call it. And also, what are these companies going to do? They're not just going to take the loss of profits right on the chin. So they're going to end up passing the costs onto you. So whatever the company sells or whatever its product or service is, it's just going to raise the price until it's a wash, basically. So what would that mean for you, even if you're in something, if you're in a career field that doesn't have, you're not having to worry about the BEZOS Act? Well, a lot of the goods and services that you buy might be victim to this, and you would see the price rise because the companies would just raise prices to reflect that. Another type of legislation that we're seeing currently that is in effect and isn't a hypothetical are tariffs. And I know that there's mixed feelings about tariffs, and people like to get involved with in their political party this way or that way with tariffs. But the fact remains that tariffs is basically a tax on goods. And if you have, there's two ways this can work. If you have competing foreign goods that are cheaper, the tariffs make those goods more expensive. And basically, if the cheap goods become more expensive and you buy the cheap goods, you're seeing prices rise, and that's inflationary. Another way would be, let's say the tariffs just dissuade all the goods from coming over here just in general. Like we don't want it. We just want to buy US goods. The example, I'm in the US, so that's the example I'm going to use. So there's less goods. Well, if you have the same amount of money chasing less goods, then the price is going to rise that way as well. And if we have a combination of both, you know, maybe there's a little bit less goods or less goods in this or that, and higher prices in this or that, and in different sectors, we would see inflation there. The third way we're going to see inflationary measures through legislation is rising of the minimum wage. You know, that's been a big kick lately, and whether right or wrong, one of the effects of raising the minimum wage is that you're causing an inflationary environment for the people that get the higher wage. Now, this one is really similar to what we talked about in the BEZOS Act. Some jobs will just disappear. If you have jobs that are worth well below the minimum wage, nobody's going to lose money and pay for work that loses money. So usually those jobs just go away or get automated or find workarounds, maybe black market under the table, or, you know, who knows what happens with those jobs. But you can't run a company successfully if you're hiring people to do tasks that lose money. You're paying them more than they're producing, you know, so that's the spirit of it. So typically, you know, when we look back through history and inflations, we're always seeing inflations really have to do with the money supply. You know, it's not often that you see legislative actions create inflationary environment, but it's the trend that we're starting to see. It's something that I'm going to keep my eye on, and you may want to too. And let's say we do enter an inflationary environment. What would be some steps that I might take, or that maybe that you could take, to protect yourself from inflation? I think one of the best ways to protect yourself from inflation is tangible assets, whether it's real estate, or maybe you invest in stocks that produce a commodity like an oil producer or a mining stock, or maybe consumer staples that people have to buy. And also collectibles do well in an inflationary environment. But don't forget the best performers in an inflationary environment, which is precious metals. Gold and silver perform really well in an inflationary environment. Matter of fact, there might not be a better performing asset class. So when we look at the gold and silver and the precious metals market, they're almost halfway off of their, if you will, gold, for example, is almost halfway down from its all-time high, and silver is more than halfway down from its all-time high. So if you do not own any of these assets or are interested, you may want to do some research and look into that. But also keep your mind on the economy and this trend where we're seeing government-introduced legislation that is inflationary and has an inflationary side effect. So until next time, I'd like to thank you all for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, I don't make these videos on a set schedule, so I encourage you to subscribe, and then that way you'll know when I make a video in the future, and you'll be notified and you won't have to miss out. So until next time, thank you.